News Talk 930 KROE Sheridan. Time now for Public Pulse, your community affairs program serving Sheridan County. To voice your opinion and for questions or comments, please call 674-4443 or 672-5763. Now here's your host, Kim Love.
And good morning. Welcome to our Tuesday morning edition of Public Pulse, sponsored by Century 21 BHJ. We'll have a one-part program this morning, and our guest for the full hour this morning is Peter Dent. And Mr. Dent is the nephew of Charles Dent, who was the individual who became aware of Leonardo's horse back in about 1977, worked on it for about 15 years, and then Mr. Peter Dent was the individual who carried on his uncle's vision to make the creation of Leonardo's horses an actuality. Mr. Dent, good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Kim.
Did I kind of cover it correctly there?
You did. You sure did. Yeah, it's a long history, and it's just a wonderful thing to be a part of, and we're so pleased that Sheridan, Wyoming, as well, will share in this wonderful story.
Okay, now, why don't you take us back to the beginning? I know you weren't there when Leonardo was working on his original concept for the 24-foot-high horse, but you want to just bring us through the history of that, take us back to the late 15th century, when the idea of this first was developed by Leonardo da Vinci?
Yeah, I will. The horse really had quite some significance in Leonardo's time, just as a general monument, in that during the Renaissance, this wonderful period of reawakening, the artists were looking back to their past and trying to see how they could outdo their Roman forefathers on so many different fronts. And one of the things that came to the fore with art and was that the greatest of the sculptures that could be done would be a horse on a mounted rider, or a horse with a rider mounted. And it was a real strong projection of power and significance. In the time of the Renaissance, with all these battling city-states, and also looking back to the Roman past, seeing how that was just the most prominent monument that someone could do. It eclipsed other types of sculpture, and of course, sculpture eclipsed painting and other forms of artwork. So, Leonardo in 1780. Early 1480s ran into some problems in Florence, and for a variety of reasons decided to move on and wrote a letter to Duke Ludovico Sforza saying, I can build military machines for you, I can build bridges, work with your water in the city, engineering, and he says, I can paint like no other, and I can build a monument in honor of your father, Ludovico Sforza. That the Duke was looking for quite some time to build a very large equine monument in honor of his father, and so this was basically Leonardo's calling card to go up to Milan and really make his name for himself and move on from Tuscany. And he found himself doing rather well at court with the Sforzas, had a very productive period of his life where he spent more continuous time than anywhere else. He was there for about 17 years. And so he was really able to make himself at home, was really able to advance the studies on optics, on anatomy, his huge variety of interests. He wasn't just doing commissioned paintings. He was really allowed a lot of academic freedom, allowed to pursue his scholarly works. He was apparently a very good singer and composed extemporaneously, and in fact was very gifted on the lyre. In fact, he even built one and gave it to the Duke when he came up to Milan. But anyway, during his tenure there, he started work around late 1480s to build this sculpture. He built a clay and earthen model that was 24 feet tall, and was presented to the Duke in 1493 at the wedding of the Duke, and people just marveled at its colossal size. Originally, it was going to be smaller than the 24 feet, but as discussions went on with the Duke, it just kept growing and growing. And it was done on 2 feet. Originally, he was going to have it perhaps on 2 rear feet, but that changed as the sculpture got larger, and then was on 2 feet, but both one front foot, one rear foot. And a lot of people were rather skeptical as to whether or not Leonardo could pull it off. He had, even by that time, been getting a reputation as one who was not prone to finishing projects he started, for one. Also, this was a huge casting, 80 tons of bronze, being done basically with a series of underground kilns. One of the problems that he discovered he would have if he were to cast it underground and do it with the feet up and then the head all the way down, that he would be hitting the water table of Milan, and potential for steam explosions, and tremendous amount of technical challenges with a pour of that size. Doing it basically all in one piece. They didn't have the joining techniques of welding and soldering that we do now, so he was actually going to do it with the entire head and body as one work, and then the tail would have been added on separately. And so there were a lot of skeptics as to whether or not it was possible, technical. And 1 inch thick, and a massive pour. 1 inch is still pretty thick, but it's not as thick as other works were being done at the time with Canon. And actually, Leonardo adapted some of the techniques for casting used in Canon for art in a novel way. And this is something that really sculpture has benefited from over the centuries, is some of his innovations in casting that were used elsewhere. So as the French had a looming invasion of Milan, and at that time Milan really was comprised of what is now the present-day state of Lombardy, as well as a bit to the south, even down to Tuscany. So it was really a rather large and major one of the city-states within Italy. They took the bronze that was going to be potentially used for the horse, and ended up using it in Canon to be able to defend themselves. And Leonardo, in his writings, lamented about how it was just understood at the times that the bronze was not going to be available. So after that unveiling in 1493, the horse was sitting in the courtyard around the palace, and after the French invaded September 10th, 1499, it started to be decay with weather, and then the French bowmen used it as a large target for archery practice. And Leonardo led the city and moved on quite a few different places before he eventually died. Legend has it in the arms of the French king in Amboise, France. And on his deathbed, he's reported to have lamented, "Oh, if only I could have finished the horse." And this is something that he really wanted to do, in part because he had realized that he really didn't have a lot to show for himself in the way of art. Presently, we know Leonardo through his many, maybe 2,000 pages or more of his manuscripts from his notebooks. But they're only, depending on how you attribute the paintings, anywhere from about 12 to as many as 18 paintings that can be attributed to Leonardo da Vinci. Basically, there are no sculptures that survive him. So he really had looked to this horse as a way to really make a name for himself, and even at the time in the late 15th century, to be able to eclipse his rivals. A young Michelangelo was coming along, others, and Leonardo just wasn't particularly productive, and he knew this, and so it caused him quite some sorrow on his deathbed about not finishing this great horse.
Okay. Mr. Dent, you want to hold on? We need to take a break for a couple of words from some of our sponsors. It seems like a good time. We will then fast forward from the late 15th century to the 20th century and carry on the story from there, if you'll just hold on. All right, we'll take a break and be back with Peter Dent right after these words from our sponsors.
Whether buying or selling property, the name on the realtor's door is not as important as the agents inside. At Century 21 BHJ, you will find an agent that specializes in your particular need, from single-family homes to large ranch estates or investment property. If you are a first-time home buyer or interested in upgrading from your current property, give Century 21 BHJ a call. Century 21 BHJ, where the gold standard lives, in downtown Sheridan.
Heads up! Whether it's at work, at home, or play, take a few seconds to look up and locate any overhead power lines. When working outside, be sure to keep yourself and any tools or equipment you're using at least 10 feet away. Teach your children to fly kites or toys in areas away from overhead power lines. And do not attempt to remove anything that has become tangled with a line. Always assume an overhead power line is energized and dangerous. A safety message brought to you by Montana Dakota Utilities. In the community to serve.
Northern Wyoming is truck country, and the Chevy Silverado is the truck of choice from Hammer Chevrolet. Dick Hammer.
Bob, the all-new Silverado is the talk of the auto world. You'll be impressed from the moment you step in the cab. When you test drive the Silverado, you will instantly notice its smooth, quiet ride, powerful V8 engine, 355 horsepower, and terrific fuel economy. And with our summer bonus tag sales event, you can get up to $9,500 cash back. Come in for all the details.
Silverados are hot right now. Find your bonus tag and find your deal at Hammer Chevrolet, 107 East Allentown. Open Saturdays till 4. Online, hammerchevy.com.
Since 1956, Midas has been a household name in full-service auto repair. The Midas Auto Repair Center in Sheridan continues that tradition with no exceptions. Brakes, tires, oil changes, belts, hoses, batteries, mufflers, radiators, shocks, and struts. Midas handles every aspect of car and truck repair and maintenance. You can trust the Midas touch at the Midas Full-Service Auto Repair Center, nationally known, locally owned. 1080 East Brundage Lane, next to Warehouse Market.
Hey, Dixie, what's wrong?
Well, I'm pretty down. I suffer from senosilicophobia.
What's that?
I'm afraid of an empty glass, and my glass is almost empty.
I know just the cure for that. Suds and Spurs Brewfest, presented by Fremont Toyota, is coming up on August 29th at Whitney Commons Park from 3 to 8 p.m. Your glass will never be empty.
You mean I can try all the beer I want?
Yep, all the beer from over 20 craft brewers for only $30, and enjoy music by Chancey Williams and the Younger Brothers Band.
That sounds great. Where do I get a ticket?
Get your ticket today at the Chamber or Blacktooth Brewing Company.
I'm Bill Heide with Star Video Audio, and whether you need to buy or rent a pro audio system, see me first. Weddings, reunions, parties, whatever the occasion, Star Video Audio has a plug-and-play system, full PA systems for bands, and DJ sound system. You can rent what you need or buy what you need. Either way, we have a pro audio system that will make your event a sound success. At Star Video Audio, Sheridan's premier electronics store at 748 North Main in Sheridan.
Okay, and welcome back to Public Pulse, sponsored by Century 21 BHJ, and our guest on Public Pulse today is Peter Dent, and we're learning more about the history of Leonardo's horse, which, of course, will be unveiled here in Sheridan, or the Sheridan's copy of it on at 5 o'clock this Thursday down in front of the Downtown Sheridan Association. Okay, Mr. Dent, when we took our break, Leonardo da Vinci had died in 1519, and then we need to fast forward about 5 centuries. And did Leonardo's drawings get discovered in a museum or library in Madrid? Is that correct?
Yeah. What happened was in the early 1960s, an American scholar from the University of Massachusetts was in Madrid working on some historical work in another area, and he just happened to discover these notebooks that were in a cryptic form, couldn't really understand, and realized that these were something extraordinarily special. And apparently there were some lost notebooks of Leonardo's that had been misfiled 150 years earlier. And this was a great find because until that time there wasn't that much known about the horse. I mean, people knew about it, it was talked about, it was written about, but some of the drawings of the horse itself and a number of other really wonderful documents came out of that find. So that was in the 1960s. The scholars worked it over, and then in 1977 it appeared in National Geographic. The mainstream media is starting to pick up on it. And in this article on Leonardo, and really highlighting a lot of some of the discoveries from these long-lost notebooks of Madrid, talked about, there was a little captioned area called The Horse That Never Was. And that's what really captivated my uncle's attention. And he thought about it. He thought, of all the people who read that magazine, I'm not sure how many thought, well, why don't we build a horse in honor of Leonardo, using this as a historical basis, and give it to the Italian people in honor of the Italian Renaissance for their contributions to mankind. And then he acted out on it and founded a nonprofit in 1982 called Leonardo da Vinci's Horse to get it all off the ground.
Okay, now, before we go on with the story of Leonardo's horse and how your uncle moved this project forward, tell us a little bit about your uncle. He was a retired airline pilot and amateur sculptor?
Yeah, that's correct. He flew for United Airlines for 37 years, and he had retired about 4 years before coming across this article, and built, had a little farmhouse in an area just outside Allentown, Pennsylvania, and was very much into doing sculpture, watercolor, and he's done that his whole life long. My grandfather insisted that when he went to Lehigh University, studied engineering, but he really didn't care for it. Did a lot of painting, painted murals on the walls of his fraternity house at Lehigh University, and his passion was elsewhere. And actually, he left Lehigh 3 credit hours short of the engineering degree to join United Airlines, and he learned how to be a pilot actually by exchanging some of his paintings for flying lessons at what was then called Allentown Bethlehem Easton Airport. So he was a passionate art collector, passionate about art, the Italian Renaissance in particular. Had quite an eye for art. Found some very interesting pieces over the years, and he, in some ways, even saved art. He was at a festival in the Amish country nearby his home, and was looking for some good red velvet to put under one of his sculptures, and asked one person who was sitting at this one antiques booth if he would mind getting up to, wanted to check out the velvet, the red velvet he was sitting on, and pulled it up and saw this, and it was beautiful red velvet, but what was on it was an embroidery that was really significant. So he bought it and later researched it and found out that it was probably a piece of embroidery that was worn by a pope in the 13th century. And this could have been destroyed over time and years. So in some ways it was kind of a rescuer of art as well.
Okay, so now, was Charles Dent your uncle or your grandfather?
He was my uncle.
He was your uncle, okay.
He didn't have any kids of his own. His family of 8, a very close Dent family.
Okay, so your uncle, Charles Dent, came across the article in 1977, and then it was then in the early 80s, 1982, decided he wanted to bring Leonardo's vision to reality. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so
right. And then
go ahead.
And then what he did was founded this nonprofit and started to build a dome studio on his property that would allow him to be able to build this huge equine monument. So he built, with a friend from Lehigh, a geodesic dome. It's about 50 feet high, about 50 feet in diameter, and put it out, did actually a lot of his own masonry work on the outside in a Renaissance style of brick, and started to work on the horse project in building this studio. He also got together in around 1990 after doing quite a bit of scholarship and seeing some of the leading scholars in the world at the British Museum and talking to preeminent scholars such as Dr. Carlo Pedretti, widely recognized at the time and even now as one of the leading Leonardo scholars, about, was it feasible? Was there enough information from what was out in the public eye from these discoveries of the drawings in Madrid and other drawings to really have enough of a basis to build a horse as an homage an homage to Leonardo and the Italian Renaissance? And the answer came back yes. And he held a couple-day symposium with Lehigh University, Lafayette College, and then also at his dome studio, and they talked about what of the 120 or more drawings of horses that Leonardo had produced was the drawing of the horse that was to be cast. And that was a big point of contention. Leonardo thought visually. He would write things down. He would sketch. He was always sketching, and so he had a lot of horse drawings. And the question was, which ones were the drawings, and even what was the height of it to be? Was it 17 feet? Was it 32 feet? And decided upon the scholarly work that they could put together at the time was about a 24-foot tall sculpture. So you really got a lot on the scholarly end done, and then also on his own and with a variety of friends and helpers sculpted a model in clay about 8 feet tall. And then sadly my uncle, after this, and he contracted Lou Gehrig's disease and or ALS, and it from when he was diagnosed until he died, it was about a year, and he left basically all of his artwork to the Leonardo da Vinci Horse nonprofit, and we had about a $6 million project on our hands, and the proceeds from his estate were maybe about a quarter of that amount of money. And so those of us who carried on after he died had a lot to do in terms of obtaining additional funding and working to realize this vision. I came onto the board a few months before he died. He asked some really family member who was on the board. It was very much a working board, very volunteer-oriented, and anyway, we promised him that we would finish this horse, and I know the last discussion I had with him before he died was that I would work to do him proud with this horse, and hopefully have done that.
Okay. Looks like a good time to take another break. Why don't we do that, and then we'll pick up with where you picked up with your uncle's vision and how you carried it forward. All right, our guest again, Peter Dent, and our topic, Leonardo's horse. We'll take a break and be right back. You're listening to News Talk 930, KROE Sheridan.
Selling your home? Wouldn't it be nice to know what your agent experience would be like ahead of time? Century 21 BHJ in Sheridan can provide you with the latest agent ratings from their customer survey file, a voluntary questionnaire of their clients' experiences. If you're looking to sell or buy, you owe it to yourself to just stop by and talk. Century 21 BHJ, living up to the gold standard, and they can prove it. Century 21 BHJ in Sheridan, where you can see the future.
Staying on top of your tax and accounting records doesn't have to be a struggle. I'm Chance Harris. Parker Mellinger CPAs has been providing professional solutions and outstanding value for over 25 years. Whether you are interested in monthly accounting services, payroll processing, or tax preparation, Parker Mellinger is the solution for all your tax and accounting needs. The initial consultation is always free at Parker Mellinger CPAs, 1470 Sugarland Drive in Sheridan.
Is your internet service slowing down your business? Make the switch to ACT's fast and reliable fiber optic internet. Fiber optic internet has virtually unlimited speeds and is considered future-proof. Plus, with the full suite of advanced business solutions, ACT will equip your business with the tools you need for success. For information about ACT and their services, go online, actaccess.net, or call 673-0910. With ACT, you're connected.
What is Sheridan Community Federal Credit Union's favorite color? It's tan, as in summer tan. Need a vacation loan to help with that tan? How about a loan for an ATV? A side-by-side. Boats are great for getting tans, so are motorcycles. Sheridan Community Federal Credit Union also makes home loans and unsecured home improvement loans. A home with a deck, perfect for tanning. At Sheridan Community Federal Credit Union, 141 South Gould, member NCUA, equal housing lender.
And welcome back to Public Pulse, sponsored by Century 21 BHJ. Our guest, again, Peter Dent, and we're learning about the history of Leonardo's horse. So, Mr. Dent, when we took our break, your uncle had been working on bringing Leonardo's horse to reality for about 12 years when he passed away in 1994. And as his just before he passed away, he got a commitment from you that you would carry on and bring this project to fruition. Is that correct?
Yes, for myself and the rest of the board.
Did you have any idea what you were getting yourself in for when you made that promise to your uncle?
Well, first it wasn't that big of a deal. I'd be showing up for a meeting once in a while. And a couple of years later, it became almost a full-time second job, nights and weekends. It was, in fact, I left what I was doing in the semiconductor equipment business so I could dedicate myself full-time to realizing this dream. It just was, to be able to make good on a promise to a loved one who passed on and really be a part of history and do something really of significance was just some experience in my life that was something I'll always cherish and don't look back with any regrets at all. It was just the right thing to do.
Okay, so when your uncle passed away, there was still quite a bit to do, both financially and in terms of finalizing the design. Now, it's my understanding that for a number of years, your uncle had been working with a sculptor, Garth Herrick, to try to translate Da Vinci's drawings into plans that could be used for the creation of the sculpture, correct?
Well, that's correct. Yeah, he and Garth were the two main ones doing the work on it, although he did have other people pushing clay around there in the dome. Well, after he died and we were able to get some of the proceeds from the horse, we knew we had enough to get it up to the foundry to do an enlargement. We still needed money to be able to cast it and a lot of other things. But when we basically took my uncle's last work up to the foundry once we had that bit of money to go there, and we enlarged it in a material that had a lot of resemblance to kind of a mix between plaster and concrete. And as we got it up to full size, there are things that you see that you wouldn't see otherwise, until you really project something up. I mean, when you're multiplying every dimension by a factor of 3, it's like height, width, depth. It's really volumetrically, it's a factor of 27, and you're looking up at a sculpture versus an 8-foot master sculpture. The 8-foot size, the master model is roughly life size, and a lot of things changed. So we saw the gesture wasn't right, the head positioning just didn't look right, and there were things that it needed major work to be done to get it right. We also, when we scaled it up to that size, we ended up on the front page of the New York Times, and all of a sudden, you have People magazine, you have news media from all over the world, and then it really becomes quite a big deal for a little group of volunteers, and we really needed to do this right. I mean, here we're a bunch of Americans trying to do an honor in art to Leonardo da Vinci, the greatest artist of the Renaissance. So the Italians were looking at us really hard to see what would this be like, and so we needed to have it in the absolute highest quality. So what we did was, after we got through this and we looked at it, and it just wasn't right, I met up with the head of the foundry at the time, Greg Glasson, who's actually been helping manage the Sheridan Horse, putting that together for us. And we talked about a sculptor in the area had done some very good animal figurative sculpture, Nina Kamu. And we brought her on to try and fix my uncle's sculpture, and after several months of painstaking labor in vain, decided we would start over with smaller maquettes and starting around 1.5 feet or so in clay, then going up to 8 feet, and then enlarging to 24 feet. What's really interesting is that my uncle's original work from the 1980s that he did with the gesture of the horse, the head position, the rest of it, one of them a couple of them were very similar to what we ended up doing with Nina. So it was true to where my uncle was before he had a lot of other people involved with the project pushing clay around to where Nina ended up with it, and also some of the scholars that we spoke to further said, the head position needed to be down, more powerful, and so anyway, we continued to raise money then through this process, and publicity was really helpful, and from foundations. We had donors from all 50 states, and we during the process we had with the clay model and kind of showing it off in 1998, and had a little party inside the foundry and some media and whatnot, and they went to start to disassemble it to start their casting process, and the head actually dropped to the floor from, as you can imagine, 16 feet or so, and it was a bit of a setback, but the foundry did a great job in regrouping and getting the head back right, and cast the horse in 66 sections that were welded together, and then in the 7 larger assembled sections that we presented to the world in June of 1999, in preparation for shipping it over to Italy for an unveiling in Milan on September 10th, 1999. So it's 500 years to the day from when the French took over the city.
Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, we the unveiling of the we didn't have an unveiling, but the showing off of the horse in June put us again on the front page of the New York Times, and then CNN, the Today Show did a live shoot with us. They've been shooting for like the whole year. CNN, People Magazine, all the wires, you name it. We had traffic backed up from the Art Foundry up to Interstate 84 for about 4 miles, and just to come see this. We had about 50,000 people who came and came to our send off, and we were running short of time because of the accident with the head falling off. That we had to fly it over to Milan, and actually made it very detailed arrangements of how to get it through JFK Airport, and then put it onto a 747 Alitalia freighter there, and then after all this came forward, then Alitalia came back and said, we'd like to have you fly it out of Chicago. Our freighters out of JFK don't have the Alitalia logo on them, and we'll pay to send it on off. And sure enough, so that's what we did, and had to kind of twist it and get it onto the freighter. And in fact, I was there in Milan in July of '99 when it came on over, and it was on all the media. The horses arrived, and so the pieces were assembled and put in place in an area of Milan in the kind of a sports area right across from the Milan soccer stadium, and it's actually on the racing grounds of the Ippodromo Galoppo. So it's the horse racing. It's a very beautiful, elegant area there on which the horse to this day is looked at by many who come out this way. Sancero's a beautiful area within the city, beautiful green space. The neighborhood just loves it. And anyway, we had about 700 or 800 people at the unveiling. Many, 600 or 700 or so from the United States, and the horse was unveiled with these balloons that just had it just come and just waft up into the off of the sculpture. It was just really really elegant in a way that the Italians can do. And I'm not sure who else. Fireworks, and had a festival of for children, and acrobatics, and we had a special concert the night before the unveiling for our donors at the La Scala Opera House, conducted by Riccardo Muti, who years later got an opportunity to go conduct the New York Philharmonic and turn them down. But anyway, it's just a wonderful celebration, and
Okay.
Just all who were there were inspired.
All right. We need to take one last break. We'll do that and then be back with our final few minutes with Peter Dent to find out a few final details about Leonardo's horse and the activities that will be taking place later this week here in Sheridan. You're listening to Public Pulse on News Talk 930 KROE Sheridan.
How smart is a Century 21 agent? They have more brain power than a barrel full of Einsteins and the gentle wisdom of a monk. They know your city, your neighborhood, and they might even know your mom, so watch your language. They can simplify, multiply, and leave tall mountains of paperwork in a single bound. Plus, they know where to find the best cup of joe. This is who they are. This is what they do. Century 21 agents. Smarter, bolder, faster. Each office is independently owned and operated.
Visit your local Century 21 BHJ office and see what they can do for you.
Technology is amazing. That's why every 2015 Accord, Civic, and CR-V has Bluetooth hands-free link, Pandora compatibility, and a rear-view camera. They will even help you save fuel thanks to the Econ button, Eco Assist. All this amazing technology is standard. Stop in and let us show you how it works, and you'll be truly amazed.
The latest in Honda innovation needs a home. Yours. Stop by Valley Motor Honda in Sheridan and take one for a test drive today.
Carroll's Furniture has always featured an impressive collection of the most comfortable and supportive mattresses ever created, all at the lowest possible prices. Good health, more energy, and a more relaxed body all begin with a good night's sleep. And a good night's sleep begins at Carroll's Furniture. If your old mattress just doesn't have what it takes, rest assured that Carroll's Furniture does in historic downtown Sheridan.
Have you been to Sheridan Computer lately? Our recent expansion means we have more inventory than ever. If you're looking for a desktop, laptop, or notepad, or computer accessories, then stop by. This is Rick with Sheridan Computer. We have the right electronics to match your goals. Whether you're wanting a high-end gaming system or just a basic setup so you can communicate via email or browse the web, we can help. Sheridan Computer, 39 North Scott Street, just south of Farmers Co-op.
Pack and Mail offers custom packing and shipping services at the lowest rate. And you can select to use the U.S. Postal Service, FedEx, or UPS. Hey, it's your choice. Pack and Mail offers easy, one-stop service, so whatever you're shipping, Pack and Mail will thoroughly pack it to safeguard against damage and ship it at the lowest rate using the carrier of your choice, whether it's the U.S. Postal Service, FedEx, or UPS at Pack and Mail on Sugarland Drive next to Aaron's behind Walmart.
Welcome back to Public Pulse, sponsored by Century 21 BHJ. Our guest, Peter Dent, who's giving us the history of Leonardo's horse. Mr. Dent will be in Sheridan this Thursday and Friday for the unveiling of Sheridan's copy of Leonardo's horse that'll be installed down there at the corner of Main and Coffee and right in front of the Downtown Sheridan Association. We'll have the unveiling ceremonies at 5 o'clock. Everyone's welcome for that. And then Mr. Dent will be at the Public Arts booth during Third Thursday to answer any questions you might have. And we'll also be at Rotary on Friday. So, Mr. Dent, you unveiled the first monumental version of Leonardo's horse in Milan, Italy in 1999, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and then subsequent to that, there have been the installation up until today of four other monumental versions of the horse, an additional 24-foot version at the Meyer Sculpture Garden, along with an 8-foot version at the Meyer Sculpture Garden, a 12-foot version in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and another 8-foot version in Vinci, Italy. Have I got that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And the Myers was full 24 feet and also helped us with part of the vision of our group, which was to have a copy in the United States, which actually we needed to do from a tax code standpoint, but wanted to have one here to share with the American public, and actually was a major funding source for us for the sale of that sculpture to get the Italian horse be able to be donated to the Milanese. It wouldn't have happened without the Myers. And then in Vinci, there's an 8-foot sculpture right in the main town center of the Piazza della Libertà, and where Leonardo was born, in a little locale, maybe about 40 minutes due west of Florence. And actually, in 2003, Lynn Erickson and I, with the Da Vinci Science Center, were over to see the dedication of the Piazzale Charles Dent, which is kind of a square, an entryway, which was dedicated right in front of the house where Leonardo was born. So really a very touching tribute by our friends in Italy. And of course now with the living legacy for the horse is the Da Vinci Science Center, wrapping up with these other sculptures. We merged the Leonardo da Vinci Horse with the Discovery Center to become the Da Vinci Science Center, which is in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and uses the inspiration of Leonardo and his curiosity and his multifaceted genius as an inspiration for learning and teaching science. So there's a living aspect of it as well. I'm so glad now that Sheridan will be sharing in this vision and dream of my uncle's with the sculpture that we'll be dedicating on Thursday.
Okay. Any other final comments you want to make? We've got about 3 minutes left in the program.
Yeah, just a little bit on the sculpture in Sheridan. That unfortunately the foundry where we cast the original sculpture was shut down in the early 2000s, and so we had it cast at Bollinger Atelier in Tempe, Arizona. Very high quality foundry, one that my uncle had looked at and we had looked at. Weren't big enough really for what we were doing, and plus we were East Coast centered. And anyway, they've done other work with some of Nina Akamu's sculpture, understand her texture and finishing of sculpture. You know, I was out there this summer myself to look at the horse. Most of the casting was done. Again, it's in parts. Actually, we used the master plaster model that was used for the 24-foot sculpture as we drew molds from that master plaster of sculpture for the horse in Sheridan. It's cast in a few dozen different pieces, and they're a little bit of an inner armature in stainless steel, TIG welded together, and then finished with a patina in a Renaissance bronze. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the finished sculpture in a couple of days.
Okay. Well, we're looking forward to having you visit to Sheridan. You've probably never been to Sheridan before, have you?
No, I've just been on the western end of the state there with.
I know you've been to Jackson, right? Okay. Anyway, we'll look forward to having your visit here. And again, Peter Dent will be part of the unveiling ceremonies at 5 o'clock down in front of the Downtown Sheridan Association. That'll be this Thursday. Mr. Dent will also be, of course, we've got the Third Thursday activities will be available at the Public Arts booth. Part of Third Thursday will also be the speaker at Rotary on Friday. So, Mr. Dent, thank you very much for being our guest on Public Pulse today. We're going to look forward to meeting you in person and having you visit, and hopefully you will be very pleasantly surprised at how wonderful Sheridan's version of Leonardo's horse looks in its new location.
Looking forward to it very much, Kim. Thank you so much.
We'll see you Thursday. You're listening to KROE Sheridan. CBS News is next.